Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mr. Tardiff. I'm a social studies and admin teacher over at Panorama Middle School, and we're talking about using collaborative study groups to make test-taking tips. Let's wait for this slide. That's my email if you want to say hi. So the best way to prepare for this is don't prepare. You got a lot of kids that they already have test anxiety, and this is kind of a really great way to open the door for them. So when they walk into the classroom, just be like, hey guys, surprise test, and then have them get started on it. So when you do the surprise test, you want to make sure you hit the 6 main type of test questions. You want a true, false, a multiple choice, a fill in the blank, an essay. Make it kind of scary. You can see you get one attempt, you can only see one question at a time. You don't get to go back, and you get the choice. I had a little bit of fun with this one, so as you can see, my first question is, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Kids started freaking out as soon as they saw this question, because clearly in social studies and in AVID, we have never discussed this. Next is Punxsutawney Phil is just a nickname for a famous groundhog, true or false? And we're going to come back to true and false in a minute at the end, because there was actually something they taught me. Like I said, I had fun with this one, but if you are a core teacher, it'd be great to put core stuff in there, and then something you haven't taught them, so they are freaking out a little bit. I do talk about movies a lot in my classroom. I try to relate everything I can to anything, so I wanted to see how much of my favorite movies my kids remembered. Magic. Mom always said, life is like, you never know what you're going to get. And it was amazing how many students did not get that answer right. But you notice you get to fill in the blank. Your next question was the definition of the word vocabulary. So now they had to type in the definition, so we're looking at vocabulary as well. The goal is to hit the 6 main types of questions. Doesn't really matter what the questions are, just make sure you hit them. I did a math equation in there. Surprisingly, this one got a lot of the kids thrown too. Of the 114 students, only about 20 or so got this one right. And it wasn't even meant to be a trick question. A minimum of 5 sentences. Here's your essay. How did you feel when you saw and heard that we had a test today? That they had no idea I was going to do this to them. And this is kind of where they laid out. I was stressed out. I was starting to get a headache. I was really mad at you. You promised me there was no test. And then I kind of let them know, hey, this isn't a real test. How do you feel now? And a lot of them are like, mean, that was stressful. And the reason was I wanted them to be stressed out about the test, because a lot of people have test anxiety, and when they go to study for a test, they study the information you teach them, but they don't study how to answer the questions. So now I looked up some details and information, and we talked about it. What did you feel before the test? What did you feel after the test? What are some of your internal and external stressors? So the kids talked about how they felt. Then they talked about external. Some kids started sweating. Some kids started having small panic attacks. Some kids had their hands shaking when they were getting ready to take the test. So we talked about those things. Then we talked about test-taking tips and how can we actually identify tips for a test. So what the kids had to do at this point was do research. What if I want to take a true-false question? How do I answer that? And this is where I learned something new. If there's a true-false question, most people would say you get a 50-50 chance of getting it right, correct? Well, through their research, the students told me it's an 80-20. 80% of the true-false questions are true. So if you're not sure, guess true, because you got an 80% chance of getting it right. I always thought it was 50-50. Then the students created posters. You'll notice I put the posters out on your tables for you. They had the creativity to create the posters as they wanted. These are the posters my students created for this presentation. By the time I got to 6th period, one of my students said, Mister, can we make them in Spanish too for the kids who can't speak English? I said, absolutely. So they made the test-taking tips posters in Spanish. The students did the research. The students decided what tips they thought were most effective, and they picked the top 3 to 5, and they put those on the poster saying, if you're doing true-false, these are the 3 to 5 tips we think are important. If you have to answer an essay, these are the 3 to 5 tips we think are important. If you're doing multiple choice, these are the 5 to 7 tips we think are most important. Because let's face it, they're the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders walking around that school taking our tests. And then Once they were done deciding which tips they thought were most important, they created their posters in Canva. I know someone else likes that one. And then, thankfully we had a poster printer. We printed up hundreds of posters, and the kids got to hang around the school so all of their peers could see their work as well. And when they're walking the hallways and they know there's a test coming, they're looking at those test-taking tip posters every day now.